Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Becoming Relentless. I am your host, elenoa.mccabe. I am an IFBB Bikini Pro. I'm an online health and fitness coach, and I am a few days out from my pro debut when you guys hear this. So I am super excited. Today's episode is going to mostly be me just talking about the show, talking about leading up into it, what I've been doing, changes, the difference between pro shows, amateur shows, and just kind of chatting with you guys. So settle in. We're gonna have our little girly chats. But if you guys didn't know, I am competing on Saturday, November 9th in Anaheim, California. It is the names of these shows are so long and preposterous. It's Muscle Contest Iron Games Pro. And it is an Olympia qualifier. So whoever wins this show gets a qualification for the Olympia in 2025, which is very, very exciting. And as this is my pro debut, I'm going in with certain goals for myself and intentions, but I'm not going in with any expectation. Because I think when you set expectations for placings or for how you want to do in a show, you're inevitably going to be disappointed. And I don't want to feel disappointed. The only time I would feel disappointed is if I got literally dead last, which somebody has to. And it might be me, but I really hope it isn't me. So we're going to do everything that we can to not have that happen. But at the end of the day, it is a contest. It is a competition. You can't control like where the judges place you or who shows up that day. All you can control is yourself. And so that's just what I continuously remind myself is as long as I'm checking off the boxes, doing what I need to do, then I can be happy with the outcome. For those of y'all who have been following my journey for a while, you might not know this. My family has actually never seen me compete in person. In fact, when I started competing in 2017 in college, I didn't tell them until after the show. So I did the prep, I competed, and then I went home for Thanksgiving, and my mom was shocked because that was the smallest that she'd probably ever seen me in my entire life. I was so lean, so tiny, just my face is all tiny. And she was like, what happened to you? And so then I had to tell them like, hey, actually I am bodybuilding and I really like it. And ever since then, I think it took a while for my parents to understand, but they have seen how happy it makes me and they've seen how it's changed the trajectory of my life and how much it's helped me grow as a person. And they've really come around to supporting and loving and cheering me on with it, which I'm so grateful for. Even in the beginning, like when they didn't quite understand, I wouldn't say that they weren't supportive. They just didn't understand. So I think this is probably really common, especially if you're at the beginning stages of your journey. Like your family's going to ask you, why are you bringing Tupperware everywhere? Or why do you have to weigh and measure and do all of these like things every single day? Like, can't you just have a bite of this cake or can't you just have an apple? And they don't quite get it, but they can still support. So if you're in that phase where maybe your family or your friends don't quite understand what you're doing yet, it's okay. Be so patient with them. That's my biggest piece of advice because they're not trying to piss you off. They're not trying to trigger you. They legitimately do not understand the process because it's probably very new and foreign for them. So give them a lot of grace, give yourself a lot of grace, and also understand that the way you explain things to them and the way that you present it is going to make such a big difference. If you're taking your Tupperware to your family barbecue and they're like, oh, you can't just have a hot dog, like isn't a hot dog protein? And you're like, no. And you don't give them any explanation, then they're probably going to still make those comments in the future because they don't understand. But if you say, hey, no, actually, in my plan, we're only doing chicken breast and veggies right now because I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z, or I have a show in X amount of weeks. and you tell them a little bit about why you're doing what you're doing. Like, oh, I really want to challenge myself, or I really want to win this show. So I'm going to eat my food, but that hot dog looks great. You enjoy, like, you open it up to a more positive experience and a more positive conversation overall than just shutting them down or shutting them out or getting instantly frustrated and annoyed. So just, if you are in that stage of your journey, like I said, be so patient, because I was there too. And I cannot tell you the last time that I spent Thanksgiving out of a deficit. I have tracked my food every Thanksgiving for the last 7 years in a row. So this year, I'm not going to be on prep during Thanksgiving, but I will be only 2 weeks into my reverse. So I will probably still be tracking. But at this point, my friends and family, they understand that, they know that. But having those conversations ahead of time too, like ahead of the holidays or ahead of events, like if you have weddings, birthdays, anything like that, prep the people you're going to be around, like have that conversation and open up the lines of communication. That way you don't feel pressured, you don't feel singled out, you don't feel angry or upset, and they feel like they get to be part of your life and your process. I don't know how I got off on this tangent, but I'm gonna loop it back because I was gonna talk about the show. So for a large majority of the audience, from what Spotify tells me anyways, is a lot of you guys are young women who are into health and fitness. So you're most likely young women who are first-time competitors or maybe newer competitors. And I wanted to talk about the difference between an amateur show and a pro show. So amateurs, my heart goes out to y'all. I am so sorry. But also I did my time as an amateur. So it's part of the competing process. But if you're bikini or wellness, you go last. You're at the end of the show. So normally the way a show is run is they have the divisions, and they'll start with a men's division. I think they'll start usually with men's bodybuilding. And then depending on the show and the promoter, they'll either do all the men and then all the women, or they'll alternate. So they'll do like men's bodybuilding, women's bodybuilding, men's classic physique, women's physique, like so on and so forth. And they start with the really muscular divisions and they work their way down. And then there's wellness. And then last, but definitely not least, is bikini. And so if you're an amateur bikini competitor, your show day is going to be very long. And really, there's nothing that we can do about that except just accept that it is going to be long and kind of prepare for that. So usually what happens is your hair, makeup, tanning, all of the stuff that you need to do to get like ready for show day is going to be early in the morning on show day. So for example, I think my very first show, my makeup was at 5:30 in the morning. And then my hair was after that at 6. And then my last like top coat of tan was 8 a.m. And then they had the athletes meeting at 8:30 and they started the show at 9. So I've been up since 5 a.m. It's 9. That's the start of the show. And then I didn't go on stage until like 2 p.m. And if you've done this before, you just know it's like hurry up and wait. Like you're excited, you're nervous, you're stressed, you've got all this stuff to do, and then you're just backstage and you're just waiting. So what I would suggest is pack a roller luggage. You don't want a bag, because if you have like a bag with straps, it could mess up your tan, it could mess with your shoulder. So I always tell my girls, like, pack a luggage, like a suitcase. And that way, number one, you have more room. Number two, you don't mess up your tan. But you can put like pillows, you can put a robe, a blanket, something in there that can help you backstage. I'd also highly recommend like packing things to keep you busy. So a book, if you're taking your phone, like take a phone charger, headphones, have everything that you need with you at all times, because you also don't know how fast or how slow the show is going to go. Because there's also been some shows that I've been at where they run through it so quickly that bikini's actually on at like noon instead of 2. So just being prepared, having everything kind of packed ahead of time. Like as an amateur, it's just one of those things where you have to be prepared. And then you also know that you're going to be hurried up and then you're going to wait. For pros are really lucky. And this is why I'm so excited for this pro show, because we are told the exact time that we will be on stage. So they'll say pro bikinis going on for prejudging at 11 a.m. So I know I have to be ready at the venue, ready to go, and I'll be on stage at 11 a.m. And then they'll say, okay, finals is at 3 p.m. Cool. So after prejudging, I can go chill, hang out with my friends, just lay down in the hotel room, whatever the case may be. And then I know, okay, cool, finals is going to be at 3 p.m. Whereas with amateurs, I'm so sorry, but usually, especially for the bikini girls, your guys' finals is going to start at like 9 or 10 p.m. And this is local show. Like if you go to nationals are triple the size of, if not more, than local shows. So more than likely, bikini girls, you're not going to get out of the venue until like 1 or 2 a.m. at a national show. And when I went pro in 2021, nationals was still in Orlando. They've since moved it to Dallas, which I'm very jealous that you guys get to compete in Dallas. But when I went pro in Orlando, everything closed at 10 p.m. So I went pro, and to celebrate, we went to the only restaurant that was still open in town. It was Bahama Breeze, and it was kind of lame. I'm not going to lie. It's kind of lame, but I did have a nice brunch the next day. So that did make up for it. So just know like the difference in timing with amateurs and pros, and then some other things that you can kind of expect as well. Amateurs, when you compete, if you win like a national qualification, or, you win the medal, the trophy, the overall prize. Sometimes, depending on the show, you could win your national entry fee for a national show. So actually, let me back up. As an amateur, when you register for a show, you have to buy your NPC card. Then you have to register for all the classes. So you register for True Novice, Novice, and Open. And the classes for amateurs are ranked by height. So let's say you're 5'5", you would most likely be class F. That's what I was, depending on the size of the show again. But you would go up against other girls who are 5'4" to 5'5", or 5'4" to 5'6", whatever it is. Each class made up by the height. If you go to the overall, so if you win your height class, you go to the overall and you win the overall, then sometimes that show, like the promoters will pay for your entry to a national show so that you have a chance to go pro. So that's where you can get certain things paid for. But as an amateur, winning doesn't really get you any money. Like you can't earn money as an amateur unless you have like brand deals or sponsors. And for that, you do have to go and like reach out to them and work with them beforehand. It's not like when you go pro, all of a sudden you have all of these doors of opportunity open. And I think that sometimes there's a misconception around that like some people are like, oh, if I just go pro, like I'm going to make it in the sport. If I go pro, I'm going to have all these sponsors and I'll get paid to do shows, or I'll get paid to go to seminars and posing clinics and this and that. And sometimes, like, don't get me wrong, sometimes you can, but for the vast majority of athletes, going pro doesn't actually afford you any extra opportunity. It's like an achievement, and it's a big achievement. So don't get me wrong, but don't think that going pro equals money, because it usually doesn't. For amateurs, really the only place that you can make money is if you have an established relationship with a brand, or you have an established sponsorship, or like I said, if you win an overall. So if you win an entire show, sometimes you will get your entry fee paid for. But everything else would still have to come out of pocket. So traveling, Airbnb, hair, makeup, tan, all that good stuff. Another thing, so pros, I've had a lot of people ask me before, like, oh, as a pro, when you compete, like, do you get paid or do you make money? And again, kind of similar to amateurs, there is prize money for winning pro shows, but it's usually first through third. And depending on the show, on the promoter, like that will determine the amount. So for example, the show that I'm doing in Anaheim, I looked at the like prize money, and for bikini, it's $4,500 like total is like the sanctioned amount for first through third. So I believe third place gets $500, second place gets $1,500. Don't quote me on this. And then first place gets $2,000, which, yes, that's nice. Like that's a nice amount of money, but also flights, Airbnb, tan, makeup, your suit, your heels, your coach, your food for the week. Like it goes pretty quick. All of us know as competitors, competing is a very expensive sport. And so I think winning it shouldn't be about the money. And it really isn't, especially for bikini. Men's open bodybuilding, I know that they have bigger prize money. They have bigger prize pots. But even then, like the amount of time and commitment and effort that goes into a man's bodybuilding journey, like open men's bodybuilding versus like bikini, is just so vastly different that if you're only competing for money, I think that you're going to be sorely disappointed. So I would not go into competing and trying to go pro as a way to make money, but it could definitely be a way to like get exposure or to open up different relationships and different ways to, I guess, build a following, build an audience, get sponsors, all of that good stuff. What else did I want to talk about today? The show. I guess I'll talk a little bit about like my expectations and kind of like going into the show. Oh, at the beginning, did I ever finish this thread of story? So my family, who's never seen me compete before in person, they're going to be at this show. So this is the very first show that they're coming to. And I think it makes it that much more special. So they've never seen me compete in person. They've seen me on a live stream. They watched when I went pro. And I still remember my mom calling me and she was like, "Oh my gosh, your purple suit looked so good. Your hair looked so good. Like I could tell that you were going to win." She started giving me like judges feedback. And it honestly, it made me so happy to hear how invested she'd got in me competing and me being on stage that day. And my siblings, like they are so supportive. They've been calling and texting me and just giving me a lot of encouragement for this prep. And I know that the last time I did a pro debut prep last year, I actually missed my sister's graduation because I was supposed to be competing that weekend. So that's something that really has always kind of weighed heavily on my heart, is that I chose, and it was my choice, I chose to not attend a big life event for my sister. It was her high school graduation, but still, because I thought that I was going to compete. And then my coach at the time told me that I wasn't ready to compete and that we were pushing the show back. And like by the time he made that decision with me, it was too late for me to go home and see my sister's graduation. Anyways, sob story aside, I am very, very, very excited because I feel like at this point, I have just been itching to get on stage, and my family has been waiting to see me on stage because they saw the live stream. They saw me go pro. They're very supportive of it now. So for them to be able to come see my pro debut in person, they live in Southern California, it just makes this experience and this show so much more meaningful to me that honestly, like in a way, I'm not nervous. I've had people ask me like, "Are you nervous?" And I'm not nervous because I know it doesn't matter how I do. It doesn't matter how I place. My whole freaking family is going to be in that crowd and they're going to get to see me do what I love. And I think that it's going to be an incredible day, like no matter what happens. So that's something that I think, that's the one thing that I'm most excited for, is seeing my family in the crowd, hearing their voices, getting to go to dinner with them afterwards. My best friend is flying in. She'll be there. So there's a lot of things that have nothing to do with the show and everything to do with the show that make me really, really excited for it and not nervous at all. I'll probably get nervous right before I step on stage, but then as soon as I get on stage, I have no nerves. Like the stage feels like home. And for those of y'all who have competed and love it, like I think you know the feeling I'm talking about. It's like when you're lining up backstage and everybody's in line and you guys are kind of talking to each other, you're like grooving with the music, you start to get the butterflies, you start to get a little nervous. But for me, like as soon as I'm in that, I call it like the batter's box, like as soon as I'm in that side position where I'm on stage, but I'm not like performing yet, the girl ahead of me is doing her routine. Oh, my nerves disappear. Like I am locked in. I'm looking at the judges. I've got like a big smile on my face. I just have this like performance, I guess, alter ego or like mindset that comes on, and I just love it. Like I love being on stage. And so I'm really looking forward to that. So when you are waiting backstage before you go on, all of my athletes that I've like put on stage this year, what I've been telling them is before you go on, bring out that like performer's mindset and personality. Because I think a lot of people get nervous and they get swept up in the pressure, whether it's pressure they put on themselves or pressure that their coach puts on them, that they need to win. Like it's the mentality of like, you either win or you've failed, essentially. And what I've instilled in my athletes, because this is a lesson that I had to learn the hard way, was that it really isn't all about winning. Like it's not about the placing at all. It's about the journey and what you learn. So right before you go on stage, I think you should take a deep breath, center yourself, and reflect on all of the tough times that you had during prep. Every single challenge that you had, whether it was like the long cardio sessions, being hungry, not being able to sleep because you felt so empty, like so hungry inside, all of the events that you said no to, all of the days like or days or nights that you missed, like going out with your friends because you had no energy, all of those things, those decisions, that discipline that you built up, all of the ways that you sacrificed. Take a moment to remember all of that right before you go on stage, because it's going to bring you into the present. It's going to help anchor you so that you don't just black out. I think one of the things that I've heard from my athletes is like when they go on stage, they don't want to black out. They just want to be present. And that comes from remembering all of the sacrifice that you did. It comes from knowing that you cultivated such a strong sense of discipline through this whole journey that you can go out there and smile and essentially show it off. Like that is the win. Getting onto that stage, being in front of your friends and family, being in front of the judging panel, just getting to do this thing that you love so much, that you sacrificed so much for. You don't want that to just be gone in the blink of an eye. You don't want to just black out and not remember and not be present and just be so nervous because you put all of this pressure on yourself to win. I can't tell you guys enough like how it isn't about winning. Somebody is going to win that day. Somebody's also going to lose that day. And then there's going to be all the people in between. And your placing is not a reflection of your hard work, the effort that you put in, the sacrifices that you made. Your placing is just that. It's just a placing, but it doesn't have any reflection on you as a competitor, as you as a person. And so just remembering that when you do go into your shows, I think is going to save you from having like disappointment and heartbreak. And like I mentioned earlier, going into this show, like you guys know, I've talked about it before. I've said it like a million times. Like my goal is to get to the Olympia, and to do that, you have to win a pro show. Like they took away the point system. So there's no more like trying to get points to qualify for the Olympia. It's like you either win a show or you don't go. And as a pro, I think that could either put a lot of stress on you and could cause a lot of heartbreak and burnout, and low motivation and just a feeling like you're never going to be enough. Or it could kind of motivate you to just stay anchored in the present and really enjoy the journey. Because if you are meant to win, you just have to keep showing up. And I think a lot of people get in their own way because they do put that timeline, they do put that expectation. Like they go in and they're just like, yeah, I'm going to win this show. And then when it doesn't happen, what are you left with? So switching your focus away from the win and just understanding that like, it's not about that. Your time will come. If you are meant to win, if you're meant to be an Olympian, like trust me, you will be on that Olympia stage. You just have to keep believing and you just have to keep showing up. And I forget what else I was going to say. Prep brain. So what else do I want to talk about before the show? Am I nervous? No. Am I excited? Yes. Do I think I'm going to win? I don't think so. And I'm not saying that in a way that is like self-defeating. Obviously, I would love to win. I would sob on stage if I won. I think as a new pro, I have realistic expectations and I've set realistic goals for myself. So going into the show, my goals are to control what I can control, which is my posing, like literally controlling my core, because sometimes I have trouble with like breathing on stage. I want to get judges' feedback and like a pro panel of judges' feedback. I want to get up next to other pros to see where I line up, to see where I need to improve. And honestly, one of my goals, as cheesy as it sounds, is just to have fun. Like, I want to go up there and have fun and know that I gave everything I could to this pro debut and enjoy it. I don't want to go up there and put pressure on myself to like have a certain placing. So those are my goals. Those are my intentions, my expectations. And then as far as like future plans, because I know people have asked, like, am I doing a season? Am I doing multiple shows? What's the vibe? I'm going to do this first show in California, and I'm going to get feedback, and I'm going to take at least 24 hours before I decide if I want to continue going and do another show or if I want to call it. But as of right now, I think I would be so happy to just do the one show. I know that there's a show in Florida, there's a show in Kansas City, and there's another one in December, but I think it depends on the feedback. It depends on what I'm told I need to work on, and that will kind of help me make my decision. But as of right now, like, I am very at peace with doing like one show and then just calling it, taking a season. If you guys have listened to my previous podcast, I think like 3 or 4 episodes ago, I did talk about my blood work and where my health is at. And to me, it's more important that I restore my health sooner rather than later. I don't want to wait. I don't want to keep pushing. And so, like I said, depends on the feedback from the show, but more than likely, I'll just do this one. And then I'll be reverse dieting through the holidays. So you guys can follow my journey with that, because it's going to be a lot of fun. As far as questions, comments, anything like that goes, you guys know you can always reach out to me on Instagram. As always, this podcast is sponsored by me, myself, and I. So if you want to work with me, if you want to be an athlete of mine, that helps keep this podcast going. If you're interested in working with me, the links are going to be in the show notes below. If you have a friend or somebody who would be interested in hearing this podcast, please send it to them, share it on your stories, share with me what resonates. And if there's ever anything that you want me to talk about, please let me know. But otherwise, I really appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. And I will catch you on the next episode when I am post-show. So until then, stay relentless.